In the Kingdom of Tonga, there's this quiet revolution happening. And it's not about politics or power. It's about something way more fundamental, how people think. Today, we're going to look at how this one-of-a-kind online university is fighting a post-colonial copycat culture. And they're doing it by mixing ancient Tongan wisdom with modern philosophy to create a whole new generation of thinkers.
So let me just start by asking you a question, straight up. Do you see yourself as a thinker, someone who comes up with new ideas, or are you more of an imitator, someone who tends to copy what other people have already figured out? I know, it's a tough question to ask yourself, but it's right at the heart of this huge challenge that's facing not just Tonga, but societies all over the world.
So this challenge, it actually has a name, the imitation problem. It's basically a crisis of creativity, a cultural roadblock that was first pointed out by one of the most important Tongan intellectuals of the last century.
And this quote from the scholar Apeli Huofa, man, it just nails it. He saw that in post-colonial Oceania, or Moana, as he preferred to call it, this lack of autonomy was making people just imitate each other, and it was just strangling any real innovation.
So where did this copycat syndrome come from? Well, Hauofa traced it all the way back to the lingering effects of European colonialism, missionary Christianity, and the pressures of modern capitalism. He saw all these institutions, from the schools to the churches, just perpetuating this cycle of imitation that was holding people back from thinking and acting for themselves.
Okay, so you've got this big problem. How do you fix it? Well, in Tonga, a couple of different ideas started bubbling up. And right at the center of this whole debate were two intellectual giants, two colleagues who had really different ideas about how to find intellectual freedom.
On one side, you had Ilaisa Futehelu. He was a philosopher, and he was all about what he called an education for knowledge. He thought the best way was a universal one, so he based his university on Western classics and the Socratic method. But then you had Epeli Hauofa. He was a social scientist and a satirist, and he argued that the answer was to revitalize Moanan Tongan classicism. See, for him, the goal wasn't just knowledge. It was fostering the autonomy for people to think for themselves.
So you've got these two titans, right? Two really powerful but kind of opposing visions. One looking outward to universal Western thought, the other looking inward to indigenous wisdom. The big question was, did it have to be one or the other? Well, a new institution decided to try and forge a third way.
And that's where Lo'au University comes into the picture. It was set up in Tonga back in 2014, and get this, it was the region's first online university. It was founded by some of Helu's former students, but they were also really influenced by Huofa, and their big mission was to bring the best of both worlds together.
The philosophy that drives this whole thing is called Fatilosika, and the name itself is just so smart. It's a total fusion. Va is the Tongan word for space, philo is just short for philosophy, and sika is short for logic. So it's this hybrid idea, a Tongan style of reasoning that literally weaves together local and global traditions right there in its name.
And this mission, it honors both Helu and Hauofa. The goal wasn't just an education for knowledge. It was something deeper, an education for thinking. Okay, but what does that actually mean? How do you do that?
Right. How do you actually build a curriculum that's designed to cultivate the very process of thought, not just cram facts into people's heads? Well, it turns out Lo'au University has this incredible three-part recipe.
Okay, so get this. Their whole approach is built on three pillars, and it's a wild mix. First, they look to ancient Tongan psychology and their concepts of the mind. Second, they brought in the work of the 20th century German philosopher Martin Heidegger. And finally, they revived the worldview of a super ancient line of Tongan thinkers, the Ha'aloau.
And you can see just how deep this goes by looking at the Tongan language itself. Their first pillar uses concepts like atamai, which means the mind, but as a mirror reflecting reality. Whakakauku isn't just thinking, it's the actual process of separating one idea from another. And fifili, which means inquisitiveness, is described so beautifully as the weaving of reasons. These aren't just words, they are whole frameworks for how to think.
Now, the second pillar. You're probably not going to guess this one. It comes from Martin Heidegger. His whole thing was that just repackaging what we already know isn't real thinking. For him, true thinking is an adventure. It's a courageous act of trying to find new knowledge and taking the risk to explore what we don't know yet.
And for the third and final pillar, they reached way, way back in time, like 1,000 years into Tongan history. For 700 years,
From the 10th all the way to the 17th century, the ruling dynasty of Tonga relied on the wisdom of this very special group of people.
They were the Ha Lo'aoa, a whole lineage of intellectuals, scientists, and advisors. And what's really important is that they stayed out of politics and war. They were just dedicated to knowledge. They were masters of navigation, construction. They're even thought to have created the Tongan annual calendar. Their wisdom was so legendary it had its own name, Toka i Maninga. And this is where the modern Loa University gets its name and its whole inspiration.
Okay, so you've got ancient Tongan psychology, a German philosopher, and a 1,000-year-old brain trust. It's a fascinating mix, for sure. But why should someone living halfway across the world care about the small online university in the Pacific?
Because what Lauau University is doing, it's not just for Tonga. It's this incredible model for how you can decolonize education. And it's not about throwing out outside knowledge. It's about confidently blending it with your own indigenous wisdom to create something totally new, something that builds real intellectual autonomy.
So let's bring this all the way back to you, right now. Think about your own time in school. Was it all about memorizing facts and dates? Was it an education for knowing? Or did it actually teach you how to think? How to ask questions? How to connect ideas? How to create something new?
You know, the scholars who created this university, they're pretty clear about it. Just repeating what's always been done, that's how you get stuck in imitation. As they put it, upon reflection, and they use that powerful Tongan word atamai, now is the time for change.
Which really leaves us with this one huge important question. Law University reached back centuries to find a blueprint for its future. So what vital ancient wisdom might just be waiting in our own cultures, ready to help us solve the crazy complex problems we're all facing today?